It is Monday. It is Monday, June 1st, 2020. And across the world, a lot of people are thinking about their time. They're thinking about their connections, they're thinking about their families. And I know that for me personally, as well as for Story Crossroads, the big question is, what do we do now? There's a lot of unrest in the world, and rightfully so. There is a lot of things that need to be talked about. There needs to be a lot of listening. And I, at least, am happy that with Story Crossroads, we've had 14 different languages on stage. We have had many people of many different cultures on stage. But just because we do that doesn't mean that it's enough. Sometimes I wonder, what can I do personally? What can I do as Rachel Hedman? But then there's the bigger picture. There's Story Crossroads. What can Story Crossroads do during this time? And luckily, at least the art of storytelling is one of those ways to communicate, to connect. And before there can be any kind of healing in the world, there first has to be pain. And that is what we're feeling everywhere. But there are certain people and certain cultures that are being more targeted than any others. And I do know that I am Caucasian. I am white. The cap that I wear is a Dutch cap. A lot of people look at the cap and they think it's a Greek fisherman cap. But it's actually a Dutch cap because the most that I am is Dutch. And so this actually connects with that culture. But I do respect and love all cultures. And what can we do? We can have more stories that are listened to. I need to step back and not talk. I know right now I'm streaming, so I kind of have to keep talking. But do I give enough place? Does Story Crossroads give enough place for that talking to happen? What we actually have coming up, I'm hoping, will at least be some kind of talk with that. And that is the Big Why. And the Big Why panel is historical storytelling meets humanities. And we're having that on Saturday, June 20th. And that's from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Now, the original purpose, and I think this will still connect well, the original purpose is on why we need to be unified. Why do we need to hear the other person's story? When there's historical storytelling, there's someone who usually dresses up as another character. They are in garb, and they then are speaking as if they are that person. They are trying to research enough to understand how would that person react. Well, now we have history that's happening. Even if it's yesterday, that is still history. And I think that still is something that can be discussed and talked about, and there can be people who have questions about that. We can have a dialogue at this event, at the Big Y panel, Historical Storytelling Meets Humanities. There will be 4 amazing people for this. So there will be Dr. Carolise Frink-Reed, and she actually doesn't do historical storytelling necessarily, but she did study African American history and lore, and she also has studied with social studies, and so I think that will be a very wonderful background to kick off with our panel. And then we will also have Sheila Arnold, and she has actually represented many kinds of people in history, and some of the people that she represents are people who have been slaves. And she said that that's important. It's a story that needs to be shared, and we're glad that we will be able to have that with the panel. So she will be answering not only as herself, Sheila Arnold, but she will also be answering as someone else. We also have Darcy Tucker, and Darcy Tucker has done many characters, and the character that she will be is more on the loyalist side when it comes to the Civil War. That will be a different perspective, and that will be interesting when she represents herself, but also this historical character. And then we do have Brian Fox Ellis, and he will also be representing another character. So characters from history, they're representing themselves, But it will be interesting to ask these historical characters as well as these personal, the people of the now, of what they think about what's going on right now, with the unrest and the importance of the humanities at this time. The humanities is always about, as humans, how are we interacting with each other? How are we speaking with each other? And there is definitely a lot of yelling that is happening, and there is a lot of pleading, and there's all kinds of praying, so many kinds of speaking that's happening right now. And this event, I'm really excited, will be one that can open up, can be a place of dialogue for that. So please come and join us for that. Now, because this is still the behind the scenes with Story Crossroads, we also delve into, well, how do we spread the word about this event that's coming up? And luckily, Jim Luter is one who has been really helpful and has been able to spread the word. Now, we spread the word our typical ways, like our e-newsletters, like through Facebook or through YouTube or promo videos, those kinds of things. But we also are specifically reaching out to people who are with the universities, who teach history or social studies related types of things. Or we're reaching out to those with theater, because a lot of times if you're representing someone from history and the art that goes into it. So we are reaching out to people that we've never reached out before. It's always been something that we've always wanted to do, and now finally we are going to be doing that. And then besides that, Jim actually put together kind of a special kind of email. We can't really do posters and flyers. We could mail things to people, but actually having these individual emails reaching out to these people has, I think, made a difference. And luckily at the storycrossroads.org/thebigwhy, people can let us know if they plan on virtually attending. That way we can send a reminder a day or two before, and that way they know how to sign on. This is something that's free. It will be multi-streamed to YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. So wherever you are seeing or watching this now, that is where you'll be able to also enjoy the panel. But besides the panel, there's so many things. It feels like there's so many things happening right now. And then on top of it, there's been some fantastic opportunities with conferences. And there was one that I talked about last week about the Small Business Grit Summit. And some of the things I was learning, but when I was sharing some of those things, it wasn't done yet. And there's a few things I wanted to talk today and how that connects to Story Crossroads. Of by attending these conferences, what is that now meaning for Story Crossroads? So there were these three women who were talking about your message. What kind of message are you giving? Are you consistent with that message? Well, at least by having this streaming on Monday nights, that is something consistent. That is something that people can go, okay, this is something I can listen to if I'm just kind of curious about some things, or maybe I'll even listen to something and be able to apply it to myself personally or whatever business I am connected with. And that would be great. If you can take these little pieces and suddenly you can apply it to your own lives, I would be thrilled. I would be happy about that. Besides, I would love to give credit to these women for having me think about consistency. And that would be Bernadette Geyer, and Geyer is spelled Geyer, Melissa Henry, and Evelyn Powers. And these three ladies, they have three separate businesses. And just because the Small Business Grit Summit was based out of Virginia, I believe that they're probably much more Virginia or in that area of the United States. I'll have to look it up. The nice thing is when you can reach out to people virtually, it doesn't necessarily matter where people are from, as long as you can communicate, as long as you can connect. So by having those names, you can look them up and find out more about them. But all three of them were saying that you need to have a message that is consistent. You know, who are you exactly? In fact, one of them said, are you fun? Are you flirty? Are you serious? And I had to think, well, gee whiz, what am I? what kind of image do I send out to people anytime I talk about Story Crossroads? I do have the serious side. I mean, even if I do behind the scenes, this is kind of serious, discussing. It's not like I'm making jokes all the time. I've never been someone who's been a ha-ha person. I've always respected those people who have that comedic timing. I don't have that. I do have passion, so that's been consistent. I've always been passionate about storytelling and Story Crossroads, and I am consistent when it comes to just being really an animated kind of person, and gets excited about ideas, about trying new things, but also hopefully people will understand from Story Crossroads that we love upholding traditions too. We like having the old and the new. It kind of makes me think of with the when someone gets married, about you need to have something old, something new, something blue, something borrowed, all of that. I feel like that's what we do as well. In fact, if it's something blue, blue is definitely part of our logo color. So perfect, right? Perfect. But think about that for yourself personally. Do you have a consistent message? What is that? So I've been thinking about what that is. I try to have Story Crossroads to have as professional look as possible. It's been wonderful having our logo, and we try to include our logo in as many places as we can. And that in of itself has been really helpful. The funny thing is this logo is not far off from what I told the Salt Lake County Library Services. Now, the Salt Lake County Library Services, they helped us kick off, and they were there for our first year and really made a difference for us to be able to do what we're doing even today. And their marketing team said, Rachel, how do you want this logo for Story Crossroads to look? And I had specific reasons for it. I said, I love blue. The color blue, there's a connection to it. There is a calmness to blue. But it's a creation type of color. A lot of times creativity connects to the color green. But I also feel like blue is also a creation color. It connects a lot of times to water. And water very much is connected to birth and creation. But the orange, the color orange for Story Crossroads is a lot of times for energy. And orange also has a type of creativity connection to it. If you think of fire, there's the red and the orange. Now red tends to have a more aggressive. It can still be wonderful and a passionate color, but orange has a little bit more fun side to it. So I love having the calmness of blue, the energy of orange, and the creativity that both of them have with that. That fire can be red or orange. So in a way it kind of has the fire and the water connected to birth, connected to creativity. And that is consistent. We always try to, whatever we're doing, have the blue and the orange, and that's been important to us. Think about any logos that you're connected to. Think about maybe even the colors that you're wearing right now. Are there certain colors that you wear all the time? And have you ever thought about why is that? And if you happen to be a business owner, and yes, if you're a performing artist, you are a business owner, then think, what are my colors? What are the ones that I need to use and be consistent with? And they, Burnett, Melissa, and Evelyn, what they were talking about was also about your website. Are you consistent there? Now, the tricky thing is just recently with WordPress, which is what we do our website with for Story Crossroads, with WordPress.com, we just found out that we can change it a little bit, that they have blocks or blocking, and we can play with it. Now, it's fun to play with things, but as soon as we play with one web page, we then have to think and go, do we really want to do this for every web page? So I only have one web page where I tested out really with these blocks, and we'll see if that's something that will spread across the whole Story Crossroads website. It's tricky because you want a balance of always maintaining and always tweaking words on your website, making sure things are up to date, making sure that there's not old addresses or things like really old stuff on there, or if it's old, it's archived, so it's meant to be there. But now we have to go, do we do that? Well, we have an event coming up June 20th. So the smartest move for us with Story Crossroads is to maybe play with it a couple pages, but not do a whole overhaul until after the June 20th event. So that's probably what's going to happen there. But in the meantime, we have all the other things to balance. So there was once again another grant that had to be turned in. And a couple weeks ago, if you were on this stream, you knew that there were 2 grants that I had to get in before midnight. And I got them in at 11:59 p.m. I mean, really, really close. It was awful close. Well, then there was another grant, and suddenly I had glanced at it so I could have it in the back of my mind, making sure that we have the details. I usually try to do bits and pieces, and then sit down and really get it done. But this time I missed something, that there was a new required document, and it's what's called an organizational chart, or sometimes it's simply called an organization chart. And all these years of Story Crossroads, since the very beginning, when we have worked as an organization, we've never used an organizational chart. It's always been, we have the board list, because there are 12 of us. So it's not like a ton of people. It's not like we have a 20-person board, but there's 12 of us, and the board listing was enough for us to know, here's their contact information, here's how we can do that. But this grant needed us to actually have it with rectangles and having lines drawn to the hierarchy of it all, which is kind of strange. It was strange to do that because I feel like we work as a team. Now I'm going to have to make lines. Now we have to make almost like divisions on things. I don't like the idea of that. But it was needed. And so I worked really hard on it. But it's amazing how things always take longer than what you think they will. So I was hoping to have this grant done by 1 p.m. But because of this new document, and I had to play around with some things, and then I'm still a mom. I have 3 kids, so I had to balance with that too. Very important, right? Want to make sure that the house is standing, the kids are alive. It's a good thing. Well, this grant was due at 5 p.m., not midnight. It was due at 5 p.m. Got the document up, got everything I needed, turned it in officially at 4:57 p.m. Now you think, oh wow, well that's an improvement. At least the other grant you got in at 11:59 p.m. and now it's 4:57 p.m. You know, instead of 1 minute, really super close. Now it's 3 minutes. You're improving, Rachel. Yeah, not the best. And I always feel awful, but I guess I would have felt really awful if I missed it, but I made it. And luckily when I turned it in, there was that one mistake. When you look at it, you've already turned it in, and you look back and you're like, oh no, because when I made that chart, there was one box that I didn't update. I had copied it from someone else about what they're over, and I moved it, and then in my mind, and we've all done this, I know this, in my mind I thought I already typed it because I already pictured it in my head. So of course it translated to the screen, but it didn't, and I felt awful, and it was going to bug me. And I thought, well, I don't know, when they review the grants, when they review this specific document, if they see this wrong, is this going to just suddenly, oh, sorry, we're not going to give money to Story Crossroads anymore? I don't know. So I emailed and said, I've already turned this in. It did get turned in, but is there any way that I can give you this corrected version? And amazingly, they said yes. So I was able to upload the correct document, and that way whoever reviews will still get to to see what needed to be done. So when you get those grant deadlines, always look way ahead, and even if you thought that you looked through everything, print it off, look at it, double check if there's been a change in required documents. And that wasn't the easiest required document. And it doesn't sound that hard because it was a lot of times just the names of the board members and their contact, but it's the arranging, it's the moving around the boxes and the lines, and does this make sense, and does this really reflect everything? Yeah, I should have started that earlier, but I was lucky again, so we'll see. So besides grants, I have reports that have to be turned in. And so this coming week, the big thing on my mind is the big report, because we got our first ever last year of a general operating grant, which was really nice, from the Utah Division of Arts and Museums. And what was really wonderful is that we had submitted a grant to receive $1,000, and they actually turned around and said, well, we're actually going to give you $2,000 instead of $1,000. And that was exciting to receive more. But now I just got an email today that there's the deadline. We got to do that to see if we get another $2,000. But obviously with COVID-19, there's been a lot of things with budgets, and we don't know if we're going to get the $2,000 again. There's most likely going to be an adjusted amount, and obviously the report has to be turned in before we will find out what that adjustment will be. And then for us at Story Crossroads, we won't know until July what that means. But at the same time, we're always grateful for anything, and we understand. It's not like I'm stomping my foot going, oh, why does that have to be? I understand, I do. And luckily, we have more than one funder. That's why you always have to submit as many applications as you can. Every year for Story Crossroads, we probably write at least 7 to 8 grants every year, and we have been blessed so far that we get almost every grant that we've applied for. So very grateful to all of our funders, and we'll see what happens as we turn in more grants. And this is the season. The spring, summer there's so many deadlines, even more so because a lot of deadlines got shifted. A lot of them were extended, which I was grateful for, because there was a lot of extra work to turn the live storytelling festival into a virtual one. So I was very thankful. And obviously, if I'm turning things in at 11:59 p.m. before midnight, or 4:57 p.m. before 5 p.m., even the extension, I could have maybe used a little bit more. But at the same time, I'm not going to complain. I'm very much thankful. So besides all of that, I've been attending the National Storytelling Network's Connected virtual conference and festival, and that's been exciting. There's been 2 days of it so far. The third day is tomorrow. And if you're listening to this, you're like, oh yeah, I've heard about that, or if you're like, oh wait, that sounds interesting, I definitely need to attend, you can still attend. There are 9 days of it, so if we've gone through 2, you still have what? 9 minus 2, you know the answer. 7, you still have 7 days. And the nice thing, and this is new this year, the conference, you can actually pay as you go. You can pay for one session. You don't just have to pay for the whole package. Even if you pay for the whole package, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm 2 days late, there will be recordings that you will then be access to if you do the full package. So very, very good deal, and so inspiring. I'm just amazed, because this conference is not usually virtual. And just like with us, with Story Crossroads, we had to then, change things, transform things from live to virtual. And that is what National Storytelling Network had to do. And whenever you do that, there will be mistakes made. I know Story Crossroads, there's things I'm like, oh, if I had more time, if I had this, if I had that. But you work with what you have. And that's exactly what the National Storytelling Network is doing. They're working with what they have. They are pulling from all over. They are connecting with people. And truly, there are 24 concerts. 24 storytelling concerts, and it represents beautifully across the United States and around the world. Now, I love it because for me, when I'm attending as this amazing, really excited Rachel who's like, oh, I love stories, feed me more stories. But I'm also listening with another set of ears. I'm listening with Story Crossroads in mind. And we do have our story training and telling committee. And even though they do decide, if I hear some people, I might reach out and say, you might want to, turn in your application with Story Crossroads. And I then might also give a heads up to the committee saying, keep an eye on this. I'd love to have your thoughts, but I did hear them from such and such a place. So I'm definitely going into this with I love stories, this is awesome, but I'm also listening and seeing like favorites. And I've been able to reach out and connect with some people already. I was really impressed with the concert that was all storytellers from Scotland. And as many people who saw it have been raving about, they've been saying it's amazing when you hear Scottish storytellers who are broadcasting from Scotland and coming into your home, and they're nice and big enough on your screen. You feel like they're talking to you. You felt like through the screen you have a bit of Scotland even in your own home. And Peter Valance was the MC for this, and just beautifully done. So beautifully done. I think it was smoother than what most live performances would be. Now, live is always best. And would I prefer to have been in their homes and listening to this music, listening to the stories? Oh, absolutely. But the next best thing, wow. And already I sent a message out to Peter saying, let's be connected. Really loved what I saw. And I think that we will now have a connection forever. That's what I'm planning on. That's what I'm hoping for. I also was really impressed with Feast. Now, Feast is, sometimes I have to think about what does Feast really stand for. And I think it's like, is it Federation? Federation of Asian Storytellers. I wish I understood that better. I just see the logo in my head, Feast, and then I get hungry. But it's still also a lovely logo. But it's of the Asian storytellers, and there was someone who told a Korean story, and it wasn't until the very end that we realized that that she never had told it in English before. No one realized that it was she had never told it in English before. And what an honor to hear a story that normally would be told in Korean. Now everyone was all saying, we want to hear this in Korean. How can we hear this in Korean? And her name was Kim On, and I think it's with an AHN, Sook, SOOK. Just fantastic. All of them were fantastic, but that just blew my mind. And then there was a storyteller today that I listened to when they had a storytellers from India, and this beautiful story. It reminded me of the story of the tiger's whisker, where time is what heals. And there is this scene with a massage that represents this healing. That the word choice, the imagery, I just love it. I love it. And I want to say hi to Jim. Now, Jim has a very, very special day today because it's your birthday, Jim. And so great for you to come. Welcome. Let me know when I get to sing to you. When do we get to sing happy birthday to you? Do I get to sing it now? I'm gonna double check to see what he says first. Oh, yeah, yes, yay! I think we should sing happy birthday right now. I'm in the mood to sing happy birthday, especially after all these amazing storytellers. I'm just in this mood to celebrate, and especially when it's Jim. Jim helps a ton with Story Crossroads. I was telling everyone earlier, Jim, that you actually helped put out emails to people to let them know about the Big Y panel. They'll be on June 20th. So we're really excited about that. So yes, I'm ready to sing. Okay, everyone, you can be ready to sing. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jim. Happy birthday to you. And many more. Cha-cha-cha. Yay! Oh, wonderful. But yes, the other big aha is that we finally figured out, at least I told Jim this, and Jim can attest to this, that we figured out who our ideal client is, which I know sounds kind of funny because with Story Crossroads we're a nonprofit and we do so much for the community. So do you really call them clients? I don't know. You could call them listeners, but a lot of times the community members are telling on stage too, so maybe that's not the right word. We got to find out the best way to say that. Maybe it's more of the ideal audience, but even then, that doesn't necessarily say that they're participating in it. Whatever that may be, Story Crossroads, we definitely welcome anybody and everybody, but we specifically are wanting to reach out to teachers and anyone in the teaching profession, which would include with homeschoolers, which would include universities with professors, with their classes. And with the National Storytelling Network, they have special interest groups, and one of them is the Youth Educators Storytellers Alliance. Now there used to be one called Storytelling in Higher Education, but when they realized they both delve into education, they actually combined just this past year. And if you do want to learn more about National Storytelling Network, because of course you do, the website is storynet.org. So I'm going to actually put this out here because it's that important. Storynet.org. This is the National Storytelling Network. And there's a conference going on right now. So if you even go to the home page, on the home page itself, it will already tell you about the they'll tell you about the conference happening right now, 7 days, and you can just choose one thing if you can't do everything. And they even have a pay as you go, or pay what you can. So amazing. Really, you're hearing stories from all around the world being broadcasted into your home. But going back to with teachers and teaching profession is, as soon as possible, I would love to have Story Crossroads have an online storytelling course, because every year we always do free 8-hour storytelling workshops, and it's going to be tricky. We don't even know what will be possible or what will be allowed next year. We usually connect with the senior centers, and when are they going to even allow something like that? Some of the people may not even have computers. I know some that I've talked to where they said that the only way that they could really be taught a workshop is if they called in. It would have to be more of a phone conference versus something broadcasted like through Zoom or YouTube or Facebook or any of those. So we have to really think about that. But if they did happen to have internet at home or some way to get to the internet, it would be great for not only our seniors but also our youth to be able to jump online and take a course for storytelling. But this is what I thought many years ago, and Jim, you were there, so I'm trying to remember when that was. It was before the festival. It might have been in 2015 even, that we had a filming day at the Viridian Event Center, and it was fantastic. We had storytellers from all over Utah who are these amazing professionals, and they are the goodness of their hearts. They knew it was a filming day. They knew Story Crossroads didn't even have a first festival yet, but we needed to have some video footage that we could use to even market or do anything with. And so what we had to do is say, we can't pay you. We do plan on getting to that stage, but if you're interested, you can come and have little snippets and you can be part of these video promos. We had some interviews that were going on there as well. But I feel like we're getting close to where we'll do another filming day. And this time, just because we have to have health and safety in mind, it would involve the home of me. And the same place where we had our Story Crossroads Spectacular, we could also film, but we'd have to schedule it. See, with the other filming day, we had everyone come at the same time so that we could all be audience for each other besides performing. But I think for this, if we could put out there to the Utah tellers for specific genres, if we're teaching storytelling, people need to know the different kinds of stories. So there are historical stories, there are pourquoi stories, there are myths and legends, there are fairy tales and folk tales, there are personal tales. And what I can imagine with this 6 to 8 hour online course, we could feature and have snippets, like a 5-minute to 7-minute story of each of these different kinds. So people just can at least get in their minds, okay, I think I lean more this way or that way. Now I know what kind of story I might want to choose when going forth with this. And I would love to feature the amazing talent of our Utah tellers. So Jim, you're listening to this. This is what's lovely about these streams. You get to be one of the first ones to hear some of these crazy ideas that I still need to then discuss with you and the board. So nothing's really happening yet. But I think another filming day, and we'd still be safe. We probably would have to have 2 videographers, but Jim, I just realized we might want at least 3 videographers, because if we're making an online course, yes, we can do closed captioning, but if we're doing it anyway, it might be best to have it in American Sign Language. Remember how we did the split screen and we had the American Sign Language? And if we had 5 to 7 minute stories with the split screen with American Sign Language, and that way it would be part of the whole 6 to 8 hour thing. And then Jim, maybe you and Laurie and Kira and Julie can think, okay, who do we feel in Utah is like the best in this genre? You know, just putting it out there and discuss. Oh, but this time I would like to at least pay a little something if they help us out with that filming, because it involves an online course. Now this online course, the basics, I want that to be free because that's what we do anyway. But anything that's beyond the basics, beyond the 6 to 8 hours, if there was something specialized, that would then could have a charge, which could be a revenue stream to help keep putting out these wonderful programs. In order to do free things, you got to have the paid things too. It's not going to happen tomorrow, I know. But in order for things to happen in the future, you have to start talking about them now. That's not the first time I've said anything like that, but that is so true. If it's going to happen, even if this is a 5-year out there or 1 year out there, if you don't start talking about it now, when are you? And by the time you talk about it, you could have been to that point. So, But I'm looking at the time. Holy cow, that time went by. I need to tell a story. This is important. I gotta tell a story. Actually, I usually tell folk tales. I love telling folk tales, but I believe it's important to tell family stories too. And this one's actually a family story. So not a personal story, but it's personal because it connects to my family. And this one involves my grandma Parkinson. And she lived for a long time. So she was 103 years old, almost 104 years old before she passed on. And wow, what a character. I love my grandma. I didn't say loved, I say love, because I will see her again. So why say it in the past tense when I'm going to see her again, right? But Grandma Parkinson lived on a farm, and there she had her 6 children. Her husband, my grandpa, would work on that farm. And while he was out there, Grandma had to make sure everything else was taken care of. And there wasn't always a ton of money, but there was enough. And especially because when she baked, she always saved the bag from that flour. Because back then, the flour bags weren't these paper type bag, or they weren't the ones that maybe had a little bit of plastic on the inside and crinkled as you open and close it. No, no. These flour bags were actual cotton, and there were different kinds of patterns. There was calico, there were stripes, and there was just simply plain white. And Grandma would look at those flour bags and she would think about what she would make. And she'd look out at her kids and she would see that, that Nancy and Joanne, maybe they need that calico flour bag and they need some new blouses. Or she would look and go, maybe Arnold and Barbara, they need some striped flour bags because they need to have some pajamas. Or she'd look at a flour bag and go, David and Don, those twins, with my dad being David, they were running around so much that their underwears were just not the best, and they need some of that white flour bag so that they can have some new underwear. And so Grandma was really good about taking whatever was there and turning it into something else, especially if it was a flour bag. But that wasn't the only thing happening. She also would use anything that my Uncle Arnold would find. Now, the nice thing about the farm was this was in Wisconsin. And Wisconsin, I love Wisconsin. I don't live in Wisconsin now, I live in Utah, but in Wisconsin, it is just green and blue. It is gorgeous. And you have the fields, but you have those wonderful hills. You have plenty of thick woods, and that's where my Uncle Arnold would go off and see what he can trap and find. And my grandma would call out to my Uncle Arnold and say, "Did you get anything today? What'd you get today?" And he'd raise up a rabbit. And she could work with rabbit. She would take that rabbit and walk over to the meat grinder and run that rabbit through, and she'd mix up that meat with some mayonnaise, and the whole family could have those rabbit sandwiches. And Arnold would go the next day, and more rabbits, more rabbits. It's a good thing rabbits produce a lot. But one day, when Arnold came back, Grandma saw that he didn't have rabbit. He had squirrel. Now, Grandma knew that her husband wasn't really fond of squirrel. The family had eaten squirrel before. But, just like what she did with the rabbit, she knew what to do with the squirrel. She headed over to that meat grinder, and she ran the squirrel through the meat grinder. And she took that meat and she seasoned it the best she could, and she mixed it up with some mayonnaise and she slapped it on some bread. And as she was making this, Arnold knew that his dad didn't like squirrel. And Arnold ran off to everyone else, all the kids at least, telling what Mom was doing. Well, then everyone had to sit down at the table, and Grandma made a look to all of her kids just to make sure that none of the kids were going to tell Grandpa anything. But all the kids couldn't help it. They got a little nervous. They got some sweat in their hands. They kept wiping. Sometimes they would breathe or hold their breaths just a little bit. And Grandpa would look around and kind of wonder about it, but he was hungry. He had worked hard out there on the farm, and he had his sandwich and he put it into his mouth and and everyone waited, and all Grandpa said was, "That was good. Can I have another one? No one told Grandpa that it was really squirrel. No one would dare. And Grandma smiled as she made a second sandwich, a squirrel sandwich for Grandpa. And so it is that no matter what Grandma has, she can turn it into something, even if it's squirrel. So that's my family story for you. Quite the legend. And yes, I have confirmed it with my aunts and uncles and my dad. And no one told Grandpa that it was squirrel. But I'm sure he knows now because he has long since passed on. But again, I will see him again. So I'll have to interview him once I see him again. But we will stream again next Monday. Glad that you could join me, everybody. And happy birthday again, Jim. And until we tell